I'm making a new large-scale photographic and text work for my upcoming show at Jan Murphy Gallery. The show is called That's What Tortures Me. So this will be a part of a suite of 3 photographic works that include texts or stories or events that kind of have occurred in my life, and then each letter is hand cut out of that text. So I use my trusty scalpel and I spend my days listening to the radio, cutting out text. My main interest, I think, when I first started making this sort of work was to actually get people to stop and look at a photograph for longer than they normally would. And I kind of used a lot of the filmic ideas with the narrative as a way to actually get people to stop and take some time to read these stories. And I feel if someone has actually gotten right to the end and they've read that kind of final line, then in some ways I've won. And that's kind of why I've started setting up these little sets in the actual photographic works, where there's a backdrop and then there's a layer of set, and I'm kind of interested in this kind of performing space that we're all kind of in, and using a lot of filmic kind of techniques and time-based techniques to get people to stop and look, think. So I've written a story here about an event that happened to me like last week, where I have applied for a job, and it's the kind of story about how I found out I didn't actually get that job. So it kind of looks into that idea of thinking that your life is going to be better than it is, and then it's that moment when you feel everything has kind of collapsed onto you. So a lot of the themes that I explore through my work, some of the more mundane events that happen in our life, some of the embarrassing events. I also look at some of the moments that the photograph normally doesn't capture. So that's kind of why I kind of etch these kinds of stories into photos, is because I'm interested in that combination between oral history and the photograph, and trying to blend them together into the one plane. Past few years I've started to make the text form these human figures. So then I outline that shape, and then I make the text kind of fit into that shape as well. I see a lot of my texts in a similar way to kind of writing a joke, and then I try and end with a punchline. Not necessarily a humorous punchline, but a line that then allows you to think further. I think more than the punchline. I mean, the beauty of a great punchline in a gag is that it changes all the words that happened before it, and then kind of adds another layer on top. I'm not too interested in things being locked or fixed. I do leave things very open to interpretation, but at the same time I'm still hopefully guiding you in the direction that I want you to go. So that's the challenge for me, is how do I leave the meaning open and yet guide you into the forest that I want you to be in.